My name is Olivia May Johnson, and I am 68 years old. If you had asked me just 1 year ago, I would have told you that I understood the nature of love, especially a mother's love. I thought I knew its shape, its weight, and its cost, but I was wrong. I didn't know anything at all. I sit in my kitchen now, looking out the window at the morning sun stretching its fingers across the floor. It's a strong sun, the kind that makes the honey-colored oak floorboards seem to glow from within, warming the very soul of the house. I often think about this house, the one I built with my love, my sacrifice, and my hard work. But today, this kitchen feels more like a memory than a part of me. It's funny how easily we can call a place ours, how quickly the words slip out, even when it's not true anymore. My kitchen, I say without thinking. But this kitchen, this house, it no longer feels like mine. Not truly. Not anymore. Every inch of it holds a piece of my memory, every corner filled with the echo of my effort, and all of it, every bit of it, was for them. My son Matthew and his wife, Emily. I remember the days when this kitchen was filled with joy. I remember the laughter, the clinking of silverware on plates, the smells of dinners I cooked just to see their smiles. I remember when we sat around this very table and talked for hours, our family whole. At least that's how I thought it was. A family together. And I thought that no matter what, no matter how things changed, no matter how much time passed, I would always be needed. That's the role I'd carved out for myself. The devoted mother, the giving one, the one who always had their back, the one who could always be counted on. I built this life for them, this home. It wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about something deeper. It was about security, about giving my son and his wife a future without worry, a future free from debt. I didn't want them to struggle the way I had when I was younger. I didn't want them to face the same uncertainties I did when I was building my life. I remember it so clearly. I took every penny from the sale of my own house, the brick rancher that my late husband and I had poured our hearts and souls into. It was the house where Matthew took his first steps, where he learned to ride a bike, where I stayed up late many nights, waiting for him to come home safely. It was a home full of memories and love. But when my husband passed, I decided it was time to let go of it. And I thought, what better way to give my son the future he deserved than to buy him and Emily their own home, a home free of mortgage, a clean slate. I found the perfect place, a spacious house with a garden. I did it all for them. Every inch of this home was built from my sacrifices. I sold everything I had worked for, everything I had saved, and I bought them this house outright. I can still remember the day we had the housewarming party. I watched Matthew raise a glass and thank everyone for coming to their new home. He said all the right things, but it wasn't just the words, it was the look on his face, the pride in his eyes, the gratitude that I mistook for genuine love. And then there was Emily. Oh, Emily, so full of gratitude, so full of emotion. She whispered to me, holding both of my hands tightly, "Olivia, you didn't have to do this. We are just so grateful. You will always have a room here. This is your home too." I believed her. I really did. Those words settled in my bones like truth. They became my truth. I thought I had finally done something right for my family. I thought I had built something that would last, something that would keep us together. But I should have known. Somewhere deep inside, I should have realized that love, the real kind, isn't something you buy. It isn't something you give away in pieces, hoping that it will come back to you in full. It isn't something you can measure by the sacrifices you make. But I didn't see it then. I didn't understand. There I was in my kitchen, with the sun shining through the windows, surrounded by the pieces of my life, the things I had collected over the years. Every chair in this room was handpicked by me, each one chosen with love, each one a small symbol of what I thought was my place in this family. The curtains, the ones I sewed myself, hang in the windows, soft goldenrod yellow, just as I imagined they would look, and the hum of my old Singer machine, which filled the evenings when I worked on these projects, feels like it's still alive in the walls. This is what I created for them. This is what I thought would be enough. But now as I sit here and look around, I see it differently. The memories, the love, the effort, all of it feels so distant, as if I've spent my life building something only to watch it crumble away. I gave them everything, the house, the money, my time, my love, and for what? I can't answer that yet, but soon I will. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when the message came. The kind of morning that felt as though time was moving slowly, the quiet hush of autumn settling over the world outside. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a golden light across my kitchen as I sipped my second cup of Earl Grey. The steam from the mug warmed my face, and I let out a long sigh, enjoying the moment. It was peaceful, something rare in the day-to-day chaos of life. But that peace was shattered when my phone chimed. At first, I thought it was just a notification, something insignificant. I almost let it go, but then I saw who it was from. Matthew, my son. My heart gave a little hopeful leap, as it always did when I saw his name on the screen. Maybe he had a question about the vacation we'd been planning, or maybe it was a quick update on the kids. I didn't know, but I was ready for whatever little snippet of connection he wanted to share. I swiped across the screen, and there it was, the message. "Hey Mom, just confirming final plans. You won't be joining us on the family cruise. Emily feels it's important that this is a family-only trip." I read it once. Then I read it again. Family only? I sat there frozen, my thumbs still hovering over the screen, trying to process the words. The first time it didn't make sense. I stared at the phone like it was speaking a foreign language, my mind struggling to make the connection. Surely I was misreading it. Surely it was a mistake. But the words didn't change. I looked around the sunroom, taking in the familiar view. The same room where I had sat and made plans for this trip, imagining the good times we would share. The cruise had been my idea, my treat for Matthew's promotion. I had already bought a new sundress and a wide-brimmed hat for the occasion, tucked away in my closet, waiting for the day. I had been so excited, so happy to offer him and Emily something they could enjoy together, a week of relaxation to celebrate his hard work. I thought it would be a chance to reconnect, to share time together as a family, to remind them both that, despite everything, I was still part of their lives. I had worked hard for this moment. I saved up for years, scrimped and sacrificed, to be able to afford such a gift, and now I was being told that I wasn't welcome. Not for a celebration, not for a vacation, not for any reason at all. My hand trembled as I put the phone down on the table. The porcelain was smooth under my fingers, but I couldn't feel it anymore. I felt nothing but cold. I kept thinking this must be a mistake. Maybe Matthew hadn't really meant it. Maybe it was just some kind of confusion. Maybe Emily hadn't made that decision. Maybe he was just passing on what she had said, without thinking. But as I sat there, the rationalizations started to fall away. There was no mistaking it. The words were clear. Family only. A simple phrase, but it cut through me like a knife. The second text came quickly after the first, and I didn't know whether I was ready for it or not. Emily's message. She had always been so polite, so poised, but this time her message carried a chilling tone. "Hi Olivia, just wanted to follow up. I really hope you understand. It's just that things will be much simpler for everyone this way." Simpler. The word echoed in my head like a hammer strike. Simpler for whom? For her? For them? The walls of the sunroom seemed to close in on me, and I had to blink hard to keep the tears from coming. But no tears came. I didn't have the energy to cry. Instead, I felt a numbness take over. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the background was the only sound in the house. But even that felt distant. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered right now. I had built this house for them. I had given them everything I could. And now, in a single text, I was being told I wasn't part of the picture anymore. I wasn't part of the family. I was a distant memory, a woman who had fulfilled her role, and was now being quietly dismissed. I thought of all the times I had shown up for them. The casserole dishes I'd brought over on weeknights when Emily was too tired to cook. The bus trip to New Orleans I'd canceled just to dog sit their little terrier, Winston, while they went on yet another vacation. I had given up my own plans, my own dreams, to support them, to be there when they needed me. And now I was being told that I wasn't even good enough to share in their celebration. My fingers hovered over the phone again, wanting to respond, to say something, anything. But what could I say? There was no reason to argue, no reason to plead. The decision had been made. I wasn't family enough to join them, and that was all there was to it. I finally typed a single word, just to acknowledge their message. My finger hovered over the send button. I wanted to say so much more, but I didn't. It was too late for that. I hit send, and the word shot off into the ether. Okay, that was all, one word. And yet it felt like a surrender. It wasn't an acceptance, it was a quiet declaration that something had changed, something fundamental. I wasn't just being excluded from a trip anymore. I was being excluded from their lives. I placed the phone down on the table and sat back in my chair. The stillness in the room was suffocating. The weight of what had just happened settled heavily in my chest. And for the first time I realized I had spent so much of my life giving and giving and giving, that I had lost sight of what it meant to receive, to be truly loved, not as a resource, but as a person. The illusion I had been living in for so long was gone, and the truth, the painful, gut-wrenching truth, was finally clear. I sat there in the silence for what felt like an eternity, the words from my son and daughter-in-law still echoing in my mind. I had heard that phrase before, of course, but never in this context, never as a reason to shut me out, to exclude me from a moment that should have been filled with joy and togetherness. I had been part of every family moment until now, every birthday, every holiday, every milestone. But now I was being told I wasn't enough to be included in the celebration of Matthew's success. The sun was still streaming through the window, casting long golden rays across the room, but it didn't feel warm anymore. The house, which had once felt like a cozy nest, now felt cold and foreign. I was surrounded by memories, but none of them felt real anymore. I had spent so many years building this life, giving everything I had to them, only to find that what I thought was love was really just an illusion. As I sat in the sunroom, I began to reflect on how it all started, how I had poured my heart and soul into creating a life for my son and his wife. They had been my world, everything I had done, every sacrifice, every penny saved, every act of love had been for them. I had never once questioned it. I had always believed that being a mother meant giving, that my love was an endless well, something I could draw from without fear of running dry, and they, my family, would always be there to drink from it, to be nourished by it. But now I saw the truth. I had given so much, but what had I received in return? A house that I thought would be a place of warmth and safety for my son and his family. I had given them the gift of a debt-free future, of security, and yet here I was, excluded from their life. The house I had bought for them, the home I had made possible, had become nothing more than a reminder of my own irrelevance. It was as if the walls that had once held our laughter now held nothing but distance. I thought about the times I had made myself indispensable, how I had told myself that it was what mothers do. I had shown up at their doorstep with casseroles when Emily was tired, had canceled my own plans to dog-sit Winston when they went on yet another vacation. I had done it all, believing that it would make me needed, believing that being needed equaled being loved. But now, sitting alone in my own home, the truth was finally sinking in. I had confused the two. The moments when I had been there for them, when I had been their safety net, had all seemed so simple. I had never asked for anything in return. It had been enough just to see them happy, to know that they were settled, that their life was comfortable. and I had believed that I was the one making it all possible. I was the one who had made sure that they had everything they needed, that they didn't have to worry about money, about bills, about debt. I thought that would make them appreciate me, make them love me. But the truth, as I now realized, was far more painful. I had made myself indispensable, yes, but I had also made myself invisible. I had given so much of myself, and yet it had never been enough. I had become the bank, the provider, the silent supporter, but not the mother. Not the person they could lean on for emotional comfort. Not the one they could turn to in times of need. I was simply a resource, nothing more. I looked around the room, my eyes resting on the pictures on the walls, the glossy, happy photos from Disney World, Cancun, Christmas in matching pajamas. Every picture showed a smiling family, my family, except I was always on the edge of the frame, never fully included, just barely there. I had convinced myself that the smiles were real, that the love was real, but now I saw it for what it truly was, a facade. They didn't need me, not in the way I had thought. They needed what I could provide, and once I had given them everything they wanted, they no longer had a place for me. It wasn't just the house, the money, the gifts. It was something deeper. It was the emotional labor I had given them, the love I had poured into every action, every word, every gesture. All of it had been a performance, a play in which I had played my part flawlessly, only to find that the curtain had fallen, and no one had bothered to remember my name. I had always thought that love was something that would be reciprocated, that the more you gave, the more you would receive. But the truth was, I had never asked for love. I had asked for validation, for recognition, for a place in their lives. And when that place was no longer needed, I became expendable. I stared at the pictures again, at the smiling faces in each one. I realized that I had been telling myself a story for years, a story where I was the supportive mother, the one who gave without expectation, the one who made sacrifices because it was what mothers do. But the truth was, I wasn't just a mother, I was a person who had given everything for others, without ever truly considering what I needed or wanted in return. I had spent so long being there for them, doing everything I could to make their lives easier, that I had forgotten to ask what I wanted for myself. I had forgotten that I was allowed to have needs too. But the hardest realization came when I thought about what I had lost. Not the house, not the money, but my sense of self. In trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect supporter, I had erased myself. I had become a mere tool, a means to an end, not a person with my own hopes and dreams, my own desires. I had been so consumed by the idea of giving that I had forgotten how to receive. And now I was left with nothing. Nothing but the echo of my own sacrifices, the remnants of a life I had built for someone else. I was no longer just a mother. I was a woman, standing alone, facing the truth about who I had become. But the real question was, what was I going to do about it? The shock of the text message still lingered, but it was beginning to fade, replaced by something else. A slow burning realization. I had been living in a bubble, convincing myself that I was doing the right thing by always being the giver, the one who put others' needs before my own. But now, sitting in the quiet of my home, I could no longer ignore the growing sense of emptiness that had crept in over the years. I had always thought that giving was enough, that if I sacrificed enough, if I put others first, love would follow. But love had never followed. The truth was simple and undeniable. Love isn't about giving until you're drained. It's about respect, about being seen and valued, not just as a provider, but as a person. I had sacrificed my own sense of worth in the name of family, and in return I was left standing alone. The house, once filled with laughter and the sense of family, now felt like a monument to my own self-neglect. I had spent years building it, years pouring my energy into making sure Matthew and Emily had everything they needed, but I had never stopped to ask what I needed. What did I want for myself? I had built a life for them, but what about me? It was in that moment, sitting in my living room, looking out at the quiet, leaf-strewn streets outside, that the truth hit me. This wasn't just about a cruise, about being excluded from a family vacation. It was about something far more fundamental. It was about reclaiming myself. I didn't know exactly what it would look like, but I knew I needed to take control. I needed to protect myself emotionally, financially, and mentally. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of a family that saw me as nothing more than a tool, a resource. I had given everything I had, and they had taken it all, but now I was empty. Empty of love, empty of purpose, empty of everything that had once defined me. I could feel the walls closing in. The truth about what had happened, the betrayal, the manipulation was clear now. I could see how Emily had slowly taken control, using her charm and her calm demeanor to make me believe that everything was done out of love. But it wasn't love. It was strategy, and Matthew, my son, had been complicit in it, whether he realized it or not. I thought about the legal documents I had signed in good faith, the power of attorney, the deeds, the paperwork that gave them access to my accounts. At the time, they had seemed like nothing more than simple formalities. Emily had been so convincing, her voice so soft and reassuring as she explained everything. It seemed harmless at the time, just a way for her to help me manage things. But now I saw it for what it really was, a way to control me, to strip away my independence, and turn me into a passive participant in my own life. The power of attorney I had signed gave Emily access to my financial accounts, allowed her to make decisions about my property, and ultimately put my future in her hands. I thought I was being smart, letting someone else handle the details, letting them make sure I was taken care of. But instead, I had unknowingly handed over control of my life. I had entrusted my security to the very people who were now turning their backs on me. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew it was time to take back control. I couldn't let them keep draining me, couldn't let them continue using me as a stepping stone in their climb to success. They had used my love and my money, and now they were taking the final step, cutting me out completely. But I wasn't going to let them, not anymore. I knew what I had to do. The first step was clear. I needed to reverse the gift of the house. I couldn't just sit idly by and let them take everything I had given them, let them strip me of my security and my dignity. I had to act. The thought of going to a lawyer, of making things official, felt like a betrayal in itself. But I quickly realized that it wasn't a betrayal. It was a protection. It was the first step in reclaiming my life. I wasn't doing this out of spite or anger. I was doing this to protect myself, to take back the pieces of me that I had lost along the way. I made the call to Mr. Dalton, the lawyer who had handled some of my earlier legal matters. He was a man I trusted, someone who had always been fair and straightforward with me. I explained the situation in as few words as possible. The betrayal, the manipulation, the house, the money. He didn't hesitate. "Olivia, I think you've been taken advantage of," he said, his voice steady and kind. "But we can fix this. We can make sure they don't take another penny." I felt a weight lift off my chest as I listened to him speak. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had someone on my side, someone who saw what I was going through, and was ready to help me fight back. We discussed the steps I needed to take, and he assured me that the legal process wouldn't take long. The first thing was to reverse the gift of the house. That was step one. Then, we would freeze my accounts, making sure that no more transfers could be made without my approval. And if necessary, we would pursue legal action against Emily for financial abuse. The idea of going that far, of exposing them for what they had done, seemed daunting, but I knew it was the only way to stop them. The sense of empowerment that came over me was overwhelming. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was taking action. I was doing something that would change the course of my life. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control again. As I sat there thinking through the steps ahead, I realized something. This wasn't just about reclaiming a house. It was about reclaiming myself, my dignity, my independence, my right to live on my own terms. This wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about the future I wanted to build for myself. A future where I wasn't just someone's mother or someone's resource. A future where I was free to live, to love, to be myself without fear of being used. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I was ready for it. ready to fight for myself, ready to take back what was rightfully mine. I had been lost for too long, but now I could see the path ahead, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me. The days following my call to Mr. Dalton were a blur of quiet determination. I had made the decision, and now the steps needed to carry it out felt almost mechanical, a series of actions I had to take to correct the mistake I had made by giving everything away. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about regaining my own sense of worth. It was about standing up for myself for the first time in years, and no amount of paperwork or legal jargon could take away that feeling of empowerment. The morning after the call, I gathered the necessary documents, copies of the house deed, the power of attorney, my bank statements, and the various legal forms I had signed without truly understanding their implications. I carefully sorted through them, reading each one slowly, as if seeing them for the first time. The familiar words and phrases on the page now seemed like a foreign language, one I hadn't fully grasped when I signed them. I made a second call to Mr. Dalton, this time with the papers in hand. He walked me through what would need to happen next. The first step was reversing the gift of the house. It was a complex process, one that would require both legal filings and the cooperation of the county recorder's office. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had never backed down from a challenge. As we spoke, I felt a sense of purpose solidify within me. I was no longer the passive observer in my own life. I was taking control. I was forcing the world to recognize my right to live on my own terms. For so long I had allowed myself to be defined by what I did for others. But this was about me. Mr. Dalton's voice was steady and reassuring as he explained the legal process in more detail. "We will need to file for the reversal of the deed," he said. "And to do that, we need to demonstrate that the original gift was made under undue influence. It's not a light accusation, Olivia, but the evidence you have, the text messages, the financial records, gives us a strong case." I listened carefully, absorbing every word. I had to be prepared for whatever came next. My emotions, the hurt and betrayal, were all still there, lurking beneath the surface, but now they had a purpose. They weren't just feelings anymore, they were tools, pieces of evidence that would help me reclaim my future. The reversal of the deed was just the first step. The second was to freeze my accounts. Everything Emily had touched, every account she had accessed with that power of attorney, would be locked. I needed to make sure she couldn't take any more from me. I wasn't going to let them bleed me dry anymore. Over the next few days, I worked with Mr. Dalton to gather the necessary documentation. Each time I sent an email, each time I handed over another form, I felt a little stronger. The quiet resolve that had been growing within me turned into something more powerful, a need to see this through to the end. The real kicker, though, came when I learned about the second mortgage. Emily had presented the house as collateral for a loan I had no idea about. She had leveraged my gift, my sacrifice, and was now using it to secure their future, all without my knowledge or consent. The anger that bubbled up inside me was a mixture of disbelief and fury. How dare they? How dare they take something that I had given with love and turn it into a pawn in their game? I reached out to Mr. Dalton again. "I need to stop this," I said. "They can't do this. They can't use my house to get money for themselves. I need to make sure the second mortgage is voided." Mr. Dalton's voice was firm. "We can do that, Olivia, but we'll need to move quickly. If they've already submitted paperwork, we have to act fast." I didn't hesitate. I was no longer the passive bystander in my life. I was the one in charge now. Days turned into weeks as the legal process moved forward. Each day I felt a little closer to freedom. The more I learned about Emily's manipulation, the more resolute I became in my decision. I couldn't let them take any more from me. I had already given them too much. It wasn't just the house. It was everything. My time, my money, my love. They had used it all, and now it was time for me to take it back. The legal documents came in, one after another, and each time they arrived, I signed them with purpose. With each signature, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. My voice. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, but I was doing it. And I wasn't going to stop. As the process continued, I couldn't help but think about what this all meant. I had spent my entire life believing that my worth came from what I gave to others. I had been taught to be selfless, to put my children first, to sacrifice everything for the people I loved. But now I realize that the true act of love is to take care of yourself too. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, for my right to live freely, for the future I deserved. And with each passing day, I felt stronger, more certain of the path I was walking. I was no longer the woman who had given everything away and expected nothing in return. I was a woman who was learning to give to herself. As the days went by, the pieces of my life began to fall back into place. Slowly, but surely I was taking back what was mine, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly free. It had been weeks since I had made the decision to reclaim my life, to take back the house, and to finally protect what was mine. But all the paperwork, all the legal steps, all the careful planning in the world couldn't have prepared me for what was about to happen. The time had come to confront them, to face my son Matthew and his wife Emily, and make them understand that I was no longer the person they thought they could manipulate. I had been living in a kind of quiet exile for the last few weeks. My new apartment was a small, modest space, but it was mine. It was clean and empty, just the way I needed it to be. No distractions, no noise. I could hear myself think again. I had unpacked only the essentials: my books, my mother's china, the rocking chair my late husband had built for me. Each item felt like a tiny act of rebellion, a small declaration that I was not who they had tried to make me. I was more than just the woman who gave and gave without question. I was Olivia, and I was no longer invisible. The morning of the confrontation, I had no idea what to expect. Matthew and Emily were scheduled to return from their cruise that afternoon. I had been waiting for this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, I felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe it was the clarity I had gained from finally taking control of my own life. Or maybe it was the simple fact that I no longer feared them. I drove to their house early in the morning, my hands steady on the wheel. I parked a block away, under the shade of a large maple tree, and sat there for a few minutes, breathing in the quiet. I didn't need to rush. I had no intention of giving them the satisfaction of seeing me flustered. The time would come soon enough. Around 10 a.m., I saw their silver SUV pull up to the curb. I watched as Matthew and Emily climbed out of the car, their faces bright and carefree. They were glowing from their vacation, their skin tanned a warm golden brown. Emily stretched lazily as she got out of the car, a satisfied smile on her face. Matthew went to the trunk and pulled out their expensive-looking suitcases, no doubt filled with souvenirs from their family-only trip. At that moment, I could feel the familiar sting of hurt, but I pushed it aside. I had no time for that anymore. There was no place for weakness. They had underestimated me, and now they would see the cost of their actions. As Matthew and Emily made their way up the driveway, their eyes caught sight of the scene before them. Two unfamiliar cars were parked in the driveway. A moving truck sat at the curb, its ramp down, and standing at the front door was a young couple, chatting happily with a real estate agent. The woman pointed at the rose bushes I had planted, and the young man laughed, putting his arm around her. They looked like the future. Matthew froze, his face drained of color, and I could see the realization hit him. The house he thought was his was no longer his. It was gone, and he had no idea how to process it. Emily was the first to react. Her smile evaporated, and her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. She turned to Matthew, her hands on her hips, and demanded, "What is going on here, Olivia?" Her voice was sharp and accusatory. Who are these people and what is that truck doing here? I didn't rush. I took my time walking across the street, letting them see me coming. I could feel the tension building between us, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the facade would crumble. I stopped about 10 feet away from them, right on the edge of the lawn that was no longer theirs. The young couple behind me was still laughing, oblivious to the drama unfolding. I didn't care. This wasn't about them. This was about me, about my rights, about reclaiming what had been taken from me. "Hello, Emily," I said, my voice calm and measured. "I suppose you won't have to worry about managing anything for me anymore." Her face twisted in confusion. She took a step forward, her voice rising in pitch. "What are you talking about? You can't just come here and take everything. We've been managing it all. We've been helping you, Olivia." I didn't flinch. "Helping? Is that what you call it? Draining my accounts behind my back? Forcing me to sign documents that gave you access to my property? Is that really what you call helping?" I could see her mouth open and close, but no words came out. The bravado, the false confidence, it all began to crumble. At that moment I turned to Matthew. He was standing there, looking like a man caught in the act. His eyes darted nervously between Emily and me, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched the papers I had sent him. He hadn't even looked at them properly yet, but I could see the terror in his eyes. The realization of what he had lost, what he had betrayed, was starting to set in. I walked toward him slowly, my footsteps deliberate. "These," I said, holding up the thick legal-sized folder, "are the only contracts that matter now." I handed the folder to him, and I watched as the color drained from his face. He fumbled with the rubber band and began to read. His hands shook, and his expression shifted from confusion to terror. The papers were full of everything. My bank statements, the fraudulent transfers, the reversal of the house deed. The truth was right there, staring him in the face. His hands tightened around the folder, as if he could hold on to it long enough to stop the reality from sinking in. "Mom," he stammered, his voice cracking, "this isn't what I wanted." I cut him off, holding up my hand. "Don't make excuses for them. Matthew, don't tell me this wasn't planned. You've known exactly what was going on." Emily's voice was rising now, her anger turning to panic. "This is all lies. It won't hold up. You can't do this. We're family. This is our home." I looked at her, my gaze steady. "No, Emily, this was my home. You were guests, and now your welcome has run out." I didn't need to say more. The truth was there, laid bare in front of them. Their smiles, their illusions, everything they had built on my back was falling apart. Matthew stood there, a hollow shell of the man I thought I knew. Emily, once so confident, was now nothing but a shrieking, panicked mess. "I didn't want this, Mom," Matthew said, his voice weak. His eyes were filled with the terror of someone who had just realized they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. I could feel the finality of it all, the end of the dream I had built, the end of the illusion of family, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep, profound peace. It wasn't relief, exactly. It was something more, something that told me I was finally free. The silence that followed my final words hung thick in the air like a dense fog that settled over everything. Matthew stood there clutching the papers I had handed him, his face pale, his expression one of disbelief. Emily, on the other hand, was seething with anger, her cheeks flushed with fury, but there was something else behind her eyes, fear. I could see it now, the fear that had always lurked beneath her smooth surface. The fear of being exposed, the fear of losing everything she had worked so hard to gain, even if it meant stepping on me to get there. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had spent my entire life accommodating others, sacrificing my own happiness and comfort for the sake of my family. For so long I had convinced myself that it was my duty, that it was what mothers did. I had given my love freely, without question. But now I realized that I had allowed myself to be taken advantage of. I had allowed them to take, and take while I gave and gave, never once stopping to think about what I needed. But now, as I stood there in the front yard of the house I had once called my own, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't anger or revenge that fueled me, though there was plenty of that too. It was something stronger, something deeper. It was the realization that I didn't need them. I never had. I had built this life for them, yes, but I had also built it for myself. I had given them everything because I thought it was what love demanded of me. But now I knew that love didn't mean sacrificing your own well-being. It didn't mean giving up your sense of self just to be needed. It was time for me to stand up for myself, to stop being a doormat, to stop allowing myself to be used. In Matthew's voice broke through the silence. Mom, please. I didn't know. I didn't know any of this was happening. I never meant for any of this. His words were weak, and I could see the panic in his eyes, but they were meaningless. The time for excuses was over. I wasn't going to buy into his guilt. This wasn't about what he meant or didn't mean. This was about the fact that he had let it happen. He had allowed his wife to manipulate him, and together they had exploited my love and trust. I took a deep breath and looked at him, my eyes steady and unyielding. No, Matthew, you didn't mean for this to happen, but you didn't stop it either, and that makes you just as guilty. He winced as if my words physically struck him, and for a moment I almost felt a flicker of regret. It was quickly overshadowed by the clarity that had come with my decision. I had been too soft for too long, too willing to make excuses, too ready to forgive. But this time I couldn't. I wouldn't. I turned to Emily, whose face had contorted into a mask of desperation. She took a step toward me, her voice rising again. You don't have the right to do this. You can't just take everything away from us. This is our home, Olivia. It's ours. I looked at her, her anger no longer intimidating, just sad. This was never your home, Emily. It was mine. You were guests and now the party's over. The words were final. I could see the realization hit her then. The truth of what had just happened settling in. The house, the money, the control they thought they had over me. All of it was gone. There was nothing left for them to take. And they knew it. They were trapped in the web they had spun. And now there was no way out. Emily's face twisted with frustration. But I could see the panic in her eyes too. Her carefully constructed facade was cracking. The anger she had been holding onto was slipping, revealing the real emotion underneath. Fear. Fear of losing everything she had built on the back of my generosity. And it was a fear that couldn't be hidden. I took a step back, my gaze firm. I'm done, Emily. This isn't about revenge. This is about taking back what's mine. I've spent years being everything for everyone else, and now it's time for me to be something for myself. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. There was nothing left for her to say. The truth had been exposed, and all that was left was the wreckage of their lies. I turned to Matthew one last time, my voice calm but resolute. This is the last time I'll ever ask anything of you. I've done enough for you both. I've given everything I could, and now it's time for me to move on, to rebuild my life. I could see the tears in his eyes, but they didn't move me. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about me, and I was no longer willing to be held captive by guilt or obligation. I walked away from them then, not looking back. I didn't need to see their faces, their expressions of regret or anger. I had already made my decision. The finality of it was in every step I took away from that house, away from them. I went back to my new apartment, the one that was truly mine, the one where I didn't have to worry about being used or taken advantage of, the one that felt like a fresh start. The moment I walked through the door, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I was free. I had reclaimed my life. I had taken back my independence. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that I was going to be okay. It was quiet now. I had returned to my new apartment, the place that had become my sanctuary. The small two-bedroom unit tucked away in a modest brick complex felt like a world away from the life I had built for my son and his wife. The walls here didn't hold memories of sacrifice. The floors weren't polished with the ghosts of what could have been. Instead, the air felt different, lighter somehow, as if the very atmosphere was welcoming me into a new chapter, one that I had almost forgotten was possible. The sun had already begun to set, casting a soft glow through the window. It wasn't the harsh golden light of the morning, but a gentler hue, one that seemed to promise peace. I sat in the rocking chair, the one my husband had made for me so many years ago, feeling the weight of the day settle into my bones. It had been a long road, but it had brought me here, to this moment, to this place of clarity. I ran my fingers along the smooth wood of the chair, feeling the grooves and curves that my husband had carefully crafted. It was one of the few things I had kept from the old house, the house that had once been a symbol of all that I had worked for, all that I had given. Now it felt like a distant memory, not in a sad way, but in a way that felt right. I was no longer the woman who gave without asking. No longer the woman who measured her worth by how much she could sacrifice for others. No, I had reclaimed myself. I had come to understand that true love isn't about giving until you're empty. It's about balance. It's about knowing when to give and when to say no. And in that knowledge, I had found something more precious than I had ever imagined, my own strength. I looked around the room. The walls here were bare, save for a few photographs I had brought with me, pictures of my children, my late husband, and some of the places I had traveled over the years. There was nothing in this room that screamed sacrifice or obligation. It was just mine, my space, my time, my life. The weight of my past, of all the years I had spent giving myself to others, had begun to lift, replaced by a quiet but profound sense of freedom. The phone buzzed on the coffee table, breaking the silence. It was from Matthew. I stared at the screen for a long moment before picking it up. The message was short, desperate, the words flowing one after another. "Mom, please, can we talk? This isn't what I wanted. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just trying to help." I read it once, then again. His words were like a distant echo, a faint whisper from a life I no longer wanted to be a part of. He was still trying to rewrite the story, to paint himself as the victim. But I wasn't fooled anymore. The lies, the manipulation, they didn't work on me now. I had seen it all for what it was. I set the phone back down on the table, the silence enveloping me once again. No message, no response. I had nothing left to give them. There was a time when I would have responded, when the word mom would have pulled at my heartstrings, when I would have tried to explain myself, to smooth over the cracks. But not now. Now I understood the importance of saying no, of standing firm in my decisions, no matter how difficult they were. I had spent so long bending to their will, letting their needs and their demands shape my life. But no more. I was free, free from the years of guilt and obligation, free from the emotional manipulation, free from the false love that had come with strings attached. The next morning I woke up early, just as I had been doing for the past few weeks. The quiet of the apartment was comforting, like a warm embrace. I made my coffee, sat by the window, and allowed myself a moment of peace. The world outside was moving, people walking to work, children playing in the distance. But here in my own space, I was at peace. I had reclaimed my autonomy, and with it I had found a new sense of self-worth. The decisions I had made weren't just about taking back the house or stopping the flow of money. They were about reclaiming my right to live for myself. For too long I had lived for others. I had poured my heart and soul into creating a life that was comfortable for my son and his wife. But in doing so, I had forgotten what it meant to live for me, to have my own dreams, my own desires, to build a life where I was valued for who I was, not just for what I could give. And now I had that life. I had the freedom to choose what came next, to take my time, to enjoy the simple pleasures, to build new memories. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt. But for the first time in years, I felt capable of facing them. I knew I couldn't change the past. I couldn't undo the sacrifices I had made, or the mistakes I had allowed. But I could control the future. And in that control I found peace. As the days passed, I began to rebuild my life, brick by brick, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to live authentically. The weight of the years I had spent in emotional debt began to melt away, and in its place, a sense of calm, of purpose, filled the space where guilt had once resided. I had been alone for a long time, but now I was alone in the best possible way. Alone, but not lonely. Alone, but not empty. And in this new chapter, I found my strength. This was just the beginning. I didn't know where the road ahead would take me, but for the first time I was excited to walk it. I was ready to embrace whatever came next.